Hi there! If you're looking for a review on A Court of Mist and Fury, you're definitely in the right place. I'm posting both of the reviews for the first and second book at the same time because the first book I roasted. Now, having read this book, I kind of understand why it had to be written the way that it was. And while I don't think it excuses the editing that choices I would not have made, I still think that the first book was worth the reading to get to this book. But this is my book look for this book based off of Rhysand's beautiful violet eyes. I think I went a little bit more like a shimmery purple than a violet, but my overall look I was going for night sky, stars, the Court of Dreams type situation with shout out to his violet eyes, using violet on my eyes. So I have switched up recently the way that I make notes on my books. I am actually an annotator. I like to write in my books. I don't like to damage my books though. And I don't know why I never thought to do this. And as you can see, there were many thoughts I had about this book. So my tabs are a lot of basically just my initial reactions to things. Some of them just say a royal fuck you, Tamlin. I think I have about 6 at least that say just that. But some of them have more of my deeper thoughts, some of my predictions and things like that. So that way I can kind of keep track of what I was thinking throughout the book. So that will make the discussion part of this book review a little bit more fun, I think. Oh my gosh, look how many feels I had about this book. I give this book an overall 4.5 stars out of 5. The only reason why I take off a half a star is because the writing style I think was really distracting from the story, and the story was really good, and it would just like kind of take me out of the story when I would get hung up on how many times Feyre cuts herself off in her thought process, and or like, I don't know, the way it was written to me was just not cohesive to the story. So I took off a half a star for the writing because, again, it's not what I enjoy. It wasn't bad writing, but it is not how I enjoy reading. There is that, but overall, I love this book. Okay, so I'm gonna do a quick synopsis and then we're gonna talk about my general review and we'll talk about some book accessories as well. Synopsis, we leave off in the last book where Feyre defeats Amarantha, the curse is broken, she has her deal with Rhysand where she has to stay with him a week out of every month and he disappears, clutching his heart and gasping. She doesn't hear from him for 3 months. So we pick up in this book 3 months after defeating Amarantha, and she is living in the Spring Court with Tamlin. She's kind of figuring out where she fits in the Spring Court now that she is Fae, and now that she's going to live with Tamlin. It's not exactly a spoiler that they're engaged because it literally gets announced like in the first like chapter that they're engaged. So now that she's engaged, she's getting distracted by planning her wedding. A bunch of stuff goes down with Tamlin, and basically it ends up that she seeks refuge at the Night Court with Rhysand to sort out some of her feelings. So it's about her discovering what Rhysand's about, discovering some of his secrets, and also trying to prevent a war from happening. A lot happens in this book, a lot more than what I just said, but that's the general gist that I can give without spoilers. My spoiler-free review, overall thoughts, this book was so good. It was so good, guys. I cannot, again, I said it in the first review, I cannot believe the same author wrote A Court of Thorns and Roses that wrote A Court of Mist and Fury. Like, Sarah J. Maas's character development, the time she takes with the characters, the dedication to their story and their detail, the story overall is just a million times better than the first book. Now, that being said, I think the first book is really necessary. Now that I've read this book, I'm kind of like, okay, I can kind of see why the first book had to be the way it was. I still don't forgive the first book for being so unedited and giving me no character development until the last 20% of the book, but I am not as angry that I am following through with this series. I just thought the characters were incredible. The characters in this book are incredible. I don't know that I've been this excited about this amount of characters in a book since Harry Potter, and I don't put this book on the same level as Harry Potter necessarily. I mean, maybe they're only on the second book, and supposedly there's another book and 2 novellas and a coloring book coming out. So it wasn't until like 100 pages to the book that I was like, whoa, I think I'm a fan. I think I'm a fan of this series. I think I like this. And Feyre grew on me so fast, so hard. I hated her in the first book, to the point where Amarantha was my hero because she was basically torturing the character that I hated so much. I didn't like anybody in the first book. Kind of liked Lucian, but really liked Amarantha because she was interesting. I really liked Rhysand because I could tell that he was going to be a big part of this book. I didn't realize just how big of a part he was going to be in this book, but I had a feeling we were going to see his story, and she did a good job of kind of giving you a little teaser of like, oh, his story is going to be interesting. So about 100 pages in, I was like, I'm sold. I'm part of the fandom. I'm in this for the long haul. I ship things. I really don't ship some things. There was so much more passion and dedication behind the writing of this book, I could tell, than the first book. And maybe Sarah J. Maas wouldn't agree with me, but the way that it comes off to me as a reader is that there was a passion for this book, and there was passion for the characters in this book, whereas the first book felt like an obligation. So I would say, if you haven't read A Court of Thorns and Roses yet, I don't know why you're watching this, but if you haven't, I would say read it. If you're like me and you hated it, I guarantee you it'll be worth it for this book, and you have to read the first book for this book to have the impact that it does, because you have to know what happens in the first book to follow along in a specific character's kind of journey. And oh my god, it's gonna break your heart in a million little tiny pieces in the best way possible. Feyre, girl, you impressed me. And you know what was kind of beautiful about this story is I was so angry, as you can see in the first book review. If you haven't watched it, you should go watch it. There's a lot of rage that goes on in that book review. But I can understand, I had a really destructive relationship in high school. It was really my first long-term relationship. It was one of those really unhealthy, delusional teen relationships. I've been in one of those. And it's not until after the relationship, and for me, it wasn't until years after the relationship that I was like, holy shit, we were so bad for each other. We were so bad to each other. And just to see Feyre get these clues from the world and from positive, wonderful relationships. I do remember my first few relationships and how terrible those went. So, and just post-relationship, being able to let it click that you were investing in something super unhealthy and bad for you. That was beautiful to watch, and now I understand the first book. So my general review of this is you just have to read the first book in order for this book to have the impact that it has. Yeah, so I love this book, and I cannot wait for the third book. I can't, oh my god, the ending, oh my god. So I love that Sarah J. Maas, with this book specifically, it had its ups and downs as far as the characters and where they're at in their predicament and things like that, and at the very end it's like she built all this up, and this, you're just on this high of yay, and then it just comes crashing down. But then she gives you just a little bit to kind of be like, but there's hope, and it's okay. It is new adult as far as I understand, which is a genre that's actually kind of new to me. I didn't realize that was a thing. So it does get really raunchy, and I did not mind the raunch. Yeah, So that was fun. The romance was fun. The build-up was fun. The tension and everything in this book is just incredible. But then the politics are also really fun and really good and really well thought out. And the relationships and the characters, everything in this book aligned, whereas everything in the first book was a mess. So that's my general spoiler-free review for this book. I would recommend this to anybody who likes young adult fiction or new adult fiction. You should know, though, if you are a young adult reader, there is quite a bit of sex. There's a lot of sex. There's a lot of raunchy, detailed sex in this book. And if you like that, then great. You're definitely reading the right book. Now for the book accessories. For those of you who don't know, book accessories are ways to stimulate the senses to immerse yourself deeper into the story. So first, for sight. I have to start with sight. So interestingly enough, got to the last 100 pages of this book right as I was leaving for a trip to Yosemite for the weekend. Me and my best friend Ariel, who had never been camping before. I go to Yosemite multiple times every summer. I was taking her for the first time to my favorite spot where we just sleep under the stars, where as long as the weather is good, which it usually is, you just pull over, lay out your sleeping bag, and sleep. No tent, no nothing. Just you and your sleeping bag in the sky. So it's really hard for me to recommend this to you, but if you can read this book in Yosemite or somewhere just as elevated, because where we were camping, we were 9,500 feet elevated, the sky was completely clear, we're above all clouds and all pollution, you can see every single star in the sky. So I don't think that there is any place on this planet that would most resemble the Court of Dreams like Yosemite, but this year was exceptional because we accidentally planned our trip during a meteor shower. And it was incredible. I've never seen a meteor shower like this before. When you're that high up, it's not uncommon to see a shooting star at least once every like 3 to 5 minutes. She was already blown away that we were seeing shooting stars at all. Then, out of nowhere, these blinding bright lights were just soaring clear across the sky. The tail went from one edge of the sky to the other, like in just like minute to 2 minute intervals. It was incredible. It was just like that scene. I don't remember what the actual event is called, but where the souls are basically flying across the sky. And the funny part was is that I brought this book and my friend Ariel was like, "What's it about?" And I was like, "Oh, girl, where I'm at, there'd be I'd have to tell you the whole first book." And she's like, "Well, we've got a 5-hour drive, so why not?" And so I literally told her from the beginning of the first book to where I was in this book. I told her everything in great detail, and she was into it. She was so into it. But since you're already telling me about it, might as well just have you just give me updates. I just kept reading and was giving her updates, but then it just turned into me being a living audiobook and reading it to her. 11 o'clock at night, we've got this beautiful blanket of stars up right above our heads, just every star in the sky that you could possibly imagine, and then the meteor shower, and I'm reading to her about the Court of Dreams. So I don't know that I could necessarily like convince anyone just to read the last half of this book in Yosemite under the stars, but if you could, that would probably be the most ideal situation for you to read this book. We were there. Her and I both were just like, we're in the Court of Dreams and this is what it looks like. So as for taste, I didn't have anything in particular. As for touch, the other thing that kind of helped me immerse me into the story, a lot of this takes place in the mountains where there's like snow caps and it's snowing and things like that. And while Yosemite is not covered in snow right now, we were high enough that we were just below where it actually does stay snowy. So you can actually see the snow like just 100 feet above you. And the water that we swam in, the lakes and the rivers that we swam in were just icy cold, but it was perfect. Felt like what you would feel if you went swimming in the night court. And as far as what to listen to, so for the first book, I was heavily into the album by Cirque du Soleil, Totem, for their show Totem. That one really captured it for me. There's a couple of songs in there I thought were appropriate for this book too, but specifically Ariel, my friend, while I was reading this to her, she's like, "I have something I absolutely have to share with you. I have to play this song." So it's from Explosions in the Sky. It's their recent album called The Wilderness, specifically the song Wilderness. It reminds me a lot of like shooting stars and stars in the sky, and the entire album is just kind of a little weird but really good, so it's kind of a lot like this book. Same like genre of music. I don't ever pronounce this correctly because I do not speak French, but HitRECord de Pirate or something like that. Basically Heart of Pirate in French, album that they created for a video game called Child of Light, and that album is really good for this book as well. The last album that I would suggest for this to help you immerse yourself into the story is by E.S. Posthumous Unearthed. So this album, specifically the songs Antissa and Eulaid, I don't know how to pronounce those correctly. I know that for a fact. I'm not saying that